The continuing journey to the heart of three great religions and their believers, the children of Abraham. Last week we saw how the Holy Prophet bequeathed the legacy of a blessing for all humanity. In spite of this, the curse of division still haunts his descendants.
Many years we were praying together with Muslims.
We're so near to those people, and yet there's no contact.
On this journey, you'll meet those happy to embrace believers different from themselves.
Neither Islam, nor Christianity, nor Judaism are calling for the perishing and the killing of the others.
But even within the same faith, you'll meet others whose outlook is dogmatic and unyielding.
When Jesus Christ comes back to this world as the Messiah, there'll be no choice but Islam.
And those who would trash the holy buildings of their adversaries.
We shall take them piece by piece, put them in a big envelope and mail them back to Mecca from where they were brought.
Different religious mindsets. How do we account for them? My journey begins in the most sacred part of the Holy Land, the city of Jerusalem. I'm in the old city in Jerusalem, treading in the footsteps of Jesus on the final stages of his journey to Calvary, the place of his crucifixion. But this city isn't just important to Christians. I'm all too well aware that Jews and Muslims also deem Jerusalem to be sacred. That's why this small piece of land, just the size of 4 football pitches, is so fascinating to me.
Because if all these three faiths deem this place to be sacred, then this is both a curse and an opportunity. The potboiler atmosphere here means that each tradition knows it does not exist in a vacuum. For better or for worse, each has to deal with the others.
And dealing with the other is never simple. In this city, there are stories of both conciliation and entrenched confrontation. Let me take you on a short trip to 2 of the most highly charged spots, 2 sacred spaces, and 2 contrasting ways of handling disputes. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the most holy site in Christendom. Pilgrims kiss the spot where Jesus was laid after he was taken down from the cross. For centuries, the numerous denominations, Orthodox, Catholic, Armenian and others, had bickered with one another about the control of access to this most sacred of places. But they settled on a compromise. The man at the entrance who opens and closes the church comes from a long-established Muslim family. Muslims have been the chief gatekeepers here for centuries, and Waji Nasibi plays a vital role here in keeping conflict at bay.
Why did they allow you to have control of all the keys?
To be neutral between all the Christians groups here. You Muslims, we are giving respect for Jesus as one of the holiest prophet.
But is he the Son of God to you?
Yes, this is the difference between Christianity and Islam. You see, we believe in Islam there is one God, and God don't have family. And Jesus, Muhammad, Moses, Abraham, everybody is a prophet.
Did Jesus die on the cross, according to
See,
Islam?
for the Islam is not crucified. He was sent to heaven.
So that's a sort of false image. It didn't happen, really.
You see, this is in your opinion. Everybody having his own belief and his own way.
It's kind of strange, isn't it, that you work here, keeping the peace, and yet here you are in a situation where the very point of the Holy Sepulchre here is to celebrate the death of Jesus, but that's something that as a Muslim that you don't accept. It's an interesting point.
We accepting that he was he chosen by God, and we believe if he is the Son of God, the Father doesn't agree that his son to be crucified in his eyes.
Because God would not let that happen.
The others.
It was more than 20 years since I'd last been inside the Holy Sepulchre, and I wanted to venerate the exact spot where Jesus had died on the cross. Wuji, as a Muslim, had denied the divinity of Christ, yet he had not told me I was wrong. Everybody having his belief and his own way were his words. Christian soldiers may have slaughtered thousands of Muslims during the Crusades, yet here was Wuji playing a symbolic role preserving peace amongst Christ's followers. Nor was he the only conciliatory Muslim voice on the premises. I'd spotted the novel site of a group of Pakistani Muslims paying homage to their prophet Jesus. And there was a question for them that would test their spirit of openness.
As a Muslim, you're allowed to go to the most important part of Christendom, but I understand that as a Christian, I'm not allowed to go to Mecca. And I just want to know why that is the case.
I don't know, because we believe in all the prophets, and Jesus is one of the prophets. So we visit all the holy places.
Right.
Even we go to the other parts of the Jewish holy places.
I mean, do you think it would be a good idea if I could go to Mecca?
Yes, it's maybe it's for the political barriers you could not go. There's the time when the prophet bring Islam. Everyone was not Muslim at that time. So they were
So if there was a change, do you think it would be a good idea to allow Christians to go to Mecca and Jews as well, perhaps?
Yes, they could.
Well, thank you very much. Perhaps the world will change.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Unorthodox, maybe, but Jerusalem seemed to be brimming with a spirit of harmony. The peaceful resolution of faction fighting in the Holy Sepulchre suggested to me that other disputes might be solved in a similar way, an idea I was about to try out on one of the most powerful men in Jerusalem. Religious battles over sacred sites don't come any tougher than this one. To Muslims, this is Al-Aqsa, the holy site where the Prophet Muhammad arrived from Mecca and then made a dramatic night journey to heaven. To Jews, the selfsame spot beyond the Wailing Wall is the Temple Mount, where Abraham was asked to sacrifice Isaac and where King Solomon and Herod had fashioned their holy temples. This is arguably the most bitterly contested piece of land on planet Earth. My earlier visit to the Holy Sepulchre had given me an idea. If the Christians had solved their squabbles by handing over the keys to the Muslims, surely they and the Jews could end their standoff by handing over power to the Christians. I felt my nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize looming on the horizon. So I popped along to hatch my plan to the #1 Muslim, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. Are you familiar with the story of the Nusayb family, the family that controlled the keys and the administration of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and have kept the peace amongst the Christians for many centuries?
نعم هي كنيسة مسيحية لكن المسيحيين هم الذين احتكموا للمسلمين لأنه هم عبارة عن عدة طوائف واختلفوا فيما بينهم.
Muslims believe this area, the Al-Aqsa area, is their holy land. And of course the Jews have the Western Wall. I've got an idea. Wouldn't it be a good idea to give control just to the Christians? Then you'd have the same peaceful solution as you have in the Holy Sepulchre, which would be a marvelous solution and no one would have to worry.
No.
No? I think I found peace here. I think this is a peaceful solution.
لا. المفتاح لما استلموا المسلمين لكنيسة القيامة بقيت الكنيسة بيد المسيحيين. المهم أن يبقى الأقصى للمسلمين وهذا القرار من رب العالمين. نحن لسنا بحاجة لأن نسلمه للمسيحيين إنما بالنسبة لكنيسة القيامة هم الذين طلبوا أن يستلموا المسلمين. إحنا ما طلبنا منهم يعطونا المفتاح ونحن مش بحاجة أن نسلم المفتاح لا للمسيحية ولا لليهود. هذا الأقصى لنا لأن الله قرر ذلك.
My career as an interfaith peacemaker had lasted all of 30 minutes. But that didn't stop me from wanting to get my own first-hand glimpse of this hotly disputed piece of turf. So I made my way forward to the threshold.
Am I allowed to go up here to look? No? Why not?
No, that's just... Are you not Muslim?
If I'm a Muslim, can I come and pray here?
Yeah. You are Muslim?
Well, no, I'm not a Muslim. So Jews and Christians can't come here?
No.
Stopped by Israeli officials who've been very nervous of letting any non-Muslims on here since the latest Palestinian uprising began 4 years ago. And I wasn't the only non-Muslim trying to cross the Rubicon. Just a few yards down below, a group of Jewish hardliners gather for an attempt to storm onto the Temple Mount. They carry with them the model of the temple from ancient times. Their goal, to penetrate what is presently Muslim-controlled Holy Land. Supporting them are a growing lobby of Christian Zionists from North America, whose presence here is tinged with more than a little self-interest.
This is the place of hope. This is the place, the only place, from which peace will come to all the world. Here at the holiest place of the Jews, but also holy to every true believer, as all the nations one day will come here and worship the Lord God of Israel. This is the place of hope.
They cleave to an article of faith in the New Testament book of Revelation, which mentions the re-establishment of the temple as a precursor to the second coming of Christ, when all, Jews included, will honor Jesus as the true Messiah. These Jews don't agree with that, of course, but they are glad of the support.
If you did succeed in building the third temple up there, what would happen to the existing Muslim buildings which are there at the moment?
The existence of the Muslims and the buildings is a result of imperialistic occupation. Our goal and our mission is to finish the Arab occupation of Temple Mount, Jerusalem, and any other place in the land of Israel.
But there's plenty of space up there. Couldn't you actually, couldn't you share it? No?
We cannot share, because the Temple Mount was dedicated by God to be only the place of the temple. And the temple will be a house of prayer for all nations, including the Arabs and the Muslims.
But then you'd have to destroy their mosque, wouldn't you?
We shall not destroy, we shall take them piece by piece, put them in a big envelope and mail them back to Mecca from where they were brought.
Is this really about religion as such? Against the backdrop of the political struggle, these sites have become prize assets, almost like football trophies. A canvas on which religion and politics have become impossible to separate. To control access to the sacred is to wield immense political power. The intransigence of all these religious men was beginning to do my head in. If God had blessed all the tribes of the earth through Abraham, why was it that some of his children used God to reach out, and yet others used God to demonize and exclude? I was about to meet a man who was similarly vexed by these questions, and who would pay the penalty for trying to answer them.
Finding God reaching out to us, they discovered the importance of human beings reaching out to one another.
Jonathan Sacks wrote a groundbreaking book which both pleaded for tolerance and celebrated the diversity among the children of Abraham.
Listen to this. They said when a human being makes many coins in the same mint, they all come out the same. God makes all of us in the same mint, his image, and we all come out different.
The chief rabbi believes that God sees the different traditions like parents might view their numerous children, varied yet blessed in their different ways. This message went down well with some Christians and Muslims, but within his own camp, the book created a storm. A number of critics thought he was selling the Jewish faith down the river. Traditionalists took out ads against him and accused him of writing a book which was a grave deviation from authentic Judaism.
The reaction to the book was extraordinary, wasn't it? I mean, there you had people taking out adverts against you in the Jewish Chronicle, saying that the book was inconsistent with the teachings of Judaism.
Any complex message that addresses divides between faiths will be read one way by people of your faith, another way by people of different faiths. So I paraphrased those passages that people found difficult, said the same thing in rather more literal language and slightly more restrained language, and the argument simply disappeared.
But so did an important part of the text. Sachs agreed to withdraw his book and replace it with a second edition, and one of the key casualties was a simple sentence: no one creed has a monopoly on spiritual truth.
I think you're downplaying the importance of this. I think that, anyone who has a religious court sitting in session, going through this text line by line, shows that you're in pretty serious trouble.
Historically, the people who've really suffered have been the politicians, not the religious leaders so much. The great peacemakers, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Sadat, Yitzhak Rabin, were assassinated. So if one occasionally has a little wave of internal criticism, that's okay.
But what of that crucial difference between the inclusive religious liberal and the closed mind of the fundamentalist? Sachs says it boils down to a key factor in our psychological makeup: insecurity.
Well, I define fundamentalism as the attempt to impose a single truth on a plural world. And what really lies behind it is fear, a profound insecurity that makes you feel when you meet somebody who's not like you or doesn't agree with you, that challenges and threatens your very being. Aggression is always a sign of insecurity. And insecurity is always, at bottom, a lack of faith, not the presence of it.
Profound words indeed, and ones that would stand me in good stead for the next stage of my journey. For I was about to come across one of the most extraordinary human beings I'd ever encountered, a religious convert with true fire in his soul. This is Brooklyn-born Joseph Cohen. 5 years ago, Joseph left his Jewish family in the USA to set up home with his wife in a settlement near the occupied Gaza Strip. Joseph was a fervent and regular visitor to the Wailing Wall and has conceded in interviews that he would, quote, come most days and knock my head against the wall. One night, Joseph was checking out a religious website. His life was about to change forever.
I was in a chat room, and a man came in, and many of the quote-unquote Israelis were finding him offensive. But the truth is, he was speaking the haqq. He was saying truth. And I spoke to this guy the whole night, and I couldn't sidetrack him. You know, as a Jew, you learn to try to be cunning and how to push the people in your direction. I couldn't push this guy anywhere. He was hard as a rock.
Is there one overarching idea in Islam that really appealed to you, that actually sealed your conversion?
The central idea would be that one perfect God that is flawless, and one deen, one religion, a perfect religion for all mankind, not just a special board of directors or their own country club, for everyone.
He moved to live in Palestinian East Jerusalem, the start of a dramatic transformation. Joseph became Yusuf el-Khattab. His wife and 4 children all changed their names and their faith. His Jewish family back in the States were not exactly bowled over.
What are your present state of relations with the family?
Talaq, broken.
Does that sadden you?
Well, Islam forbids me to lie. I'll be honest with you. You might say I'm cold, but actually, no. I grew up like a lock and key child, so it's not like a close-knit family. And I basically tended for myself.
Jewish families, Jewish culture, Brooklyn, you only get one set of parents.
It's true, but we were never extremely close. I was basically taking care of myself. My mother worked, my father was gone during the day. And we weren't that close from the beginning.
What do you have in faith now that you didn't have before as a Jew?
I have true belief.
Why should I take anything you say seriously? I mean, you converted to a new faith on the internet. Who's to say that in 2 years' time you won't be a Roman Catholic like me and we'll both be going off to the Vatican to see the Pope?
We should go to the Vatican. I have a duty to go there to give a message of Islam to the Pope too. But you have to
What would
understand
happen to
something.
you if you renounced your
I would be
Islamic
killed,
faith?
and this is one of the miracles of Islam.
Why should you be killed?
Why? Because it's clear in the Quran. There's no belief after disbelief. You can't go in and out, and every Muslim is warned this before they take Shahada.
Is this when people say sometimes the only way out of Islam is
death? That's the fact. But still, this is the miracle. It's still the fastest growing religion. Knowing this, people still accept it. Christians, Jews are still accepting Islam.
I'm not surprised it's the fastest growing religion in the world when the penalty for leaving Islam is death.
Renouncing the message of Islam, the sin of apostasy, is certainly a serious business, but many moderate Muslims would balk at Yusuf's views on the death sentence. Their view is that faith is a matter of personal assent, and point to one of the Quran's most celebrated texts to make their point. Surah 2, verse 256, there is no compulsion in religion. Still, Yusuf's take on apostasy was the first inkling to me that his understanding of Islam was not exactly of the cuddly variety. Yusuf made it clear that he's not a spokesman for his local mosque, but further conversations revealed that his views were very similar to those of a so-called Wahhabi, the kind of hardline political Islamist that one has come to associate with Saudi Arabia. Just before I'd met Yusuf came chilling news. A cafe bombing in Haifa had killed 22 people, a number of whom were Arab Israelis. In the aftermath, it emerged that the bomber had been a young woman from the West Bank town of Jenin, and it made me wonder what Yusuf would make of it.
I'm very proud of my sister, what she did last week. And inshallah, we have thousands more that are willing to do the same.
Your sister was the suicide bomber?
My sister in Islam, my sister in faith. And this is the biggest sacrifice that she gave.
I mean, I've studied the Quran, I've looked at the Hadith, the sayings of Muhammad, and it seems pretty clear to me that women and children are declared as innocent. Isn't restraint more important?
Who has more restraint than the Palestinians? I mean, it's almost a joke that somebody like the Jews or the Christians can come to us here and tell the Muslims that you have to have restraint after being beat up by guard points, after having me called filthy words in front of my kids, after being beat up, after being taken out of my house in the middle of the night in front of my kids, and they tell me to have restraint.
Yusuf is blessed with 4 well-behaved and talented kids. I raised again the subject of the Haifa bombing that had resulted in the deaths of several young children. Surely, as a father, that would induce some serious second thoughts. But his answer was the most chilling yet.
This is really the best blessing for them, because a child that dies before 10 years old goes to Jannah. They're in paradise.
It's a blessing to get killed on a bus?
Allah guides who He wants to Islam.
It says very clearly in the Quran that if a Muslim kills another Muslim, that he will not see God, and that in fact he will be condemned to eternal, well, hellfire. Surely that puts him in a very difficult position in terms of justifying what he's done.
That's true, but it's intention. Nobody has the intention to go out and kill Muslims. And that Muslim
Just
is a
use your
shaheed.
common sense. Who's going to be on that bus?
No. And the common sense is it's going to be mostly Jews. That's common sense. Common sense to any Muslim here is that we don't go on buses. We don't go on egged buses, except the few that do, the exception.
Do you believe in the concept of the innocent civilian in the State of Israel?
Absolutely not. There is no innocent civilian. Every one of them goes in the army. Every one of them votes for a government that oppresses. So there is no compromise. We have nothing to offer them. What can we give them?
Both he and I claim belief in God, yet it seemed we were living on different theological planets. An hour's drive northwest of Jerusalem lies a controversial new security structure. It's more than 20 feet high and will eventually span hundreds of miles. Depending on your viewpoint, it's either a fence or a wall. Israel says it's needed to block out the suicide bombers whose actions are championed by Yusuf. Palestinians say it will cut off and destroy communities which have been here for centuries.
It's a fact perhaps known to a few, but the word religion comes from the Latin verb religare, which means to bind or to bring together. Now, it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on, so to speak, when it comes to Israel's security needs. This place says it all. If religion is about binding, then these two teachers, Hassan, a Palestinian Muslim, and Adina, who's Jewish, are certainly attempting to make sure that that security fence does not have the final word. Some years back, Adina Shapira answered an ad from a Palestinian school wanting a Hebrew teacher.
I think I picked it up in a supermarket or something like that. I don't even recall. It was so much by chance. And for me, I don't think that I ever pictured a school, a Palestinian school, within any Palestinian areas or beyond the Green Line. I thought that there are Arab schools within Israel, and the Arabs that live here know Hebrew. It is about time that I go and meet someone of the other side within our country. I never even imagined that it would be so.
Which contact had you had with anyone on the other side?
None.
She was posted to a school just outside Bethlehem on the West Bank. It was called Hope Flowers. To carry out her new teaching mission, Adina had to subject herself to the daily drudgery of controls and roadblocks, the common everyday experience of her new pupils. This startling change in her life now left her Orthodox Jewish family facing some rather tricky questions from the neighbors.
Very frequently, after a particularly atrocious suicide attack, so neighbors would say, how can Adina possibly talk to these people? But when they have all that hasata, what's the incitement? In their literature, in their educational literature, what business does Adina have talking to these people? And my response would always be, well, that's why she's talking to them. I mean, she is dealing with the issue of incitement.
What about Mum? I mean, how did you feel when she started this venture?
Well, we were naturally a little bit worried as she was about to go someplace that was strange, and I understood that you heard that we bought her a cell phone and we made her call the police, and generally we've been very, very proud of what she's done. And
because as a family, I mean, you're Orthodox Jews. It's not as if we could somehow paint this family as liberal, peacenik, very, very left-wing.
I think you could put all of that together.
Was this decision to embrace the other something that flowed from her religious faith? Adina is swift to downplay personal piety, but talking to her, it's clear that it played a huge part in her decision.
I believe that God created man. He didn't create the Jewish man. He created man, and we're all created in the image of God, and that's everyone. And I think that conviction is something that makes it very easy for me to go and approach something like this, because I had a very clear sense of who I was, and that wasn't threatened.
Adina's work has mushroomed. She's set up an exchange program with her colleague Hassan Abdullah. Their joint task is to unite teachers from both sides of the divide, in the hope that such encounters will, in time, send a clear signal to their students.
Just imagine that a teacher goes to his school and he talks to her colleagues about a meeting that she had held with Israelis. And then it happened, and then the students in the class asked him, "What were you doing, teacher, last Friday? Were you meeting the Israelis?" "Yes, of course." "So what were you talking? Were you meeting the settlers?" "Of course, no." "So who were you meeting with?" "I was meeting teachers who were discussing your rights to exist and their rights to exist." And here comes the point, that you have to point out to the students that it's not only my right to exist, it's only the other's right to exist. Neither Islam, nor Christianity, nor Judaism are calling for the perishing and the killing of the others.
You'd think that getting 30 teachers together would be a doddle. Not a bit of it. Checkpoints, permits, and other bureaucratic obstacles make any encounter a hazardous enterprise.
There's a separation between the Israeli and Palestinian people, a physical separation between them, which is meant, at least by the Israeli government, to create, if not security, then at least a sense of security with the Israeli people.
It also means that you have these like cardboard cutout images of one another, doesn't it, in a way? I mean, it's so easy to think that if you're a Palestinian, all you ever see is soldiers at a checkpoint, and if you're an Israeli, all you ever see are pictures of bombs on TV, and that's the limit of the human contact.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's not my contact, which is very different than the average person, obviously, because we speak all the time.
But you're an exception.
But we're definitely an exception.
They've battled hours to get here, but both sides have finally made it.
To ventilate, express your feelings about what's going on around our two communities.
They know when they get back to their own communities, they'll run the risk of being labelled traitors and collaborators. But such risks are worth taking. Indeed, there's a higher law that dictates they must be taken.
If we believe in God, truly, this is the way to salvation from this political disagreements and conflict that we have.
And what does belief in God really mean in a word, in terms
Yes.
of your neighbour?
Implementing God's principles.
Which is?
Not to kill, not to steal, and not to deprive others' rights. Implement it, not just raise it as a slogan. We need to implement it by action, not by words.
Harping back to Rabbi Sachs's theory about insecurity, it was self-evident to me that both Hassan and Adina had been robust individuals from strong family backgrounds. Meeting people who were different had not threatened their own secure sense of identity. The Jerusalem March, an annual celebration of Israel's holiest city, and a chance for me to catch up and quiz Yusuf Khattab just a little further. I could sense his discomfort as visitors from all over the world, many of them American Christian fundamentalists, descended to declare support for the state of Israel. They're not exactly shrinking violets.
Thank you for being Israelis. It's because the prophet Zechariah said the children will be playing on the streets again that we in Canada know that he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he loves you and we love you. God bless you.
This whole scene seemed to speak to Yusuf of the impending menace posed to Islam by the USA and Europe.
In Europe, we see that they're trying to make the euro just took over, and soon they're going to have a constitution, and Europe is going to be just like America soon. It's going to be the United States of Europe, and it's going to push this way. Now Turkey. Now they're trying to push Turkey into it. You understand? Once it gets to Turkey, it's going to be the United States of the Middle East and Asia. Now, if they became Muslims, it would be fantastic. We don't care.
These views might suggest a chronic insecurity, but the perceptions are real. Perhaps he seems an isolated case, but this view is far from uncommon in political Islam, whether we in the West like it or not. On a final meeting with Yusuf, I wanted to put a couple of direct questions to him about his decision to turn his back on his family and his faith.
Is this an act of self-hatred? I mean, turning your back on the past, you have no links with parents and family anymore. People could interpret this conversion as simply a way of almost reinventing yourself.
Well, I think of it just the opposite way. We believe that every person is born into pure monotheism. Only our rabbis, our priests, our parents, or whoever it is, corrupted our ideas, our school teachers. So I just returned back to the straight path after learning Judaism and being in their schools and learning their books, the filthy Judaism.
You can't. Why use that term? I mean, that's offensive, isn't it, to people?
I'm not trying to be offensive, but that's the fact.
Meeting you has confused me. I admire your devotion. I admire the energy you put into your religion. But I am repelled by some of the things about children under 10 dying and going straight to heaven. Is it not the case that you crave this kind of certainty because of the psychological difficulties of your past, your upbringing?
No, not at all. I don't hate the Jews because of, you know, they're Jews. I'm not a white supremacist. I hate them. I hate their religion, I should say. And because of this, we have a duty as Muslims, and because we have the haqq, to fight munkar is the word in Arabic, which means evil deeds in any way, whether it's interest banking, whether it's pornography, whether it's money laundering on 47th Street Diamond District. This is our duty to enforce, and we will enforce it, whether George Bush or Tony Blair like this or not. This is our obligation to do.
I wonder what you might think of me privately as a Roman Catholic.
You know religiously what I believe. I mean, we have ahlak and adab, we have manners in Islam, but you have to know the truth of what we say.
But I'm a lost soul.
You're not lost because you're still alive.
But I've got a few years to find myself.
Who says a few years? Maybe you'll die in 30 seconds, as will I. We should all die in the state of Islam.
Is Islam going to take over the world eventually? Will it be the world religion? Is this inevitable?
Inshallah, we're hoping so.
But do you believe that will happen?
Eventually that will be. There will be no choice in the end.
How will that happen?
By dawah, by, how do you say? By Islamic propagation or the rifle. It's going to be either way, but it's going to happen.
You sure?
100%.
I found Yusuf's views and his pathological certainty poles apart from Hassan, the Palestinian teacher, and the faith of other Muslims I knew back home. But I was far from worried that as a Christian I was doomed to certain damnation. The Quran makes a special place for God-fearing Jews and Christians, so-called people of the book, the Bible. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. But Yusuf had left me with other questions. What of his defense of suicide bombers? I needed a more credible authority to rule on all this. It was time to make a further journey. Cairo, home of the Al-Azhar Mosque, one of the highest-ranking seats of Islamic scholarship. It's said that no student is admitted to the university here unless they can demonstrate complete mastery of the Quran. The word Quran means recital, harping back to the process by which the angel Gabriel communicated the 114 surahs, or chapters of Islam's holy book, to the Prophet Muhammad. I was curious to know whether the students here really knew these sacred verses by rote.
Do you speak English?
Little.
All right, because I have here Surah 14, which is called Ibrahim. Al-Isra, the night's journey, very famous.
من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى.
Okay, stop there. Is there anybody who can continue from that point?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وقضينا إلى بني إسرائيل في الكتاب لتفسدن في الأرض مرتين ولتعلن علوا كبيرا.
Okay, stop there. How old were you when you learnt the Quran like this?
6 years old.
6 years old.
This memorizing is impressive, but recollection is one thing, determining how different religious mindsets interpret words and apply them to the modern world is another.
Religious texts, of course, can be eternally pliable. I think it was Shakespeare who said that the devil can cite scripture for his own purpose. So the question that we have in the West for Islam, and in particular for the Quran, is what does this text say about relations with other religions, and what does it say about the use of violence?
I wanted to quiz the wisest gurus. There was none better than one of Al-Azhar's most established figures, Sheikh Mahmud Ashur. In front of a captive audience, I began by asking him how Islam regarded Jews and Christians.
طالما بيعاملوكم معاملة طيبة ومعاملة حسنة والعلاقات بينكم حسنة لا يعتدون عليكم ولا يخربون ولا يدمرون ولا يقتلون تحسنوا إليهم وتبروهم يعني تعاملوهم بالعدل ويبقى فيه صلة طيبة ومعاملة طيبة بينكم وبينهم القرآن أمرنا بهذا فما استقاموا لكم فاستقيموا له وسيدنا النبي وصانا لهذا.
That seemed clear enough. But what of the suicide bombers like the one in Haifa, whose actions might endanger women, children, and other non-combatants? Now came an answer I was not expecting.
الفلسطينيين لا يجدون شيئا يدافعون به لأنفسهم حياتهم بيقدم حياته بيقدم عمره بينسف نفسه لأنه مش لاقي حاجة يقدمها بيواجه ترسانة أسلحة ليس عنده شيء على الإطلاق اللي بيقدم نفسه ده في مواجهة هذا العدو اللي بيغتصب أرضه وبيغتصب عرضه وبيهدم بيته وبيهدم البنية الأساسية في بلده بيخرب وبيدمر لا شك أنه شهيد وأعلى درجات الشهادة.
It appeared a green light to Hamas and Islamic Jihad to continue their campaign, whatever the casualties. Was this really Islamic orthodoxy? Accompanied by my government minder, I was taken to the ministry responsible for administering Egypt's holy sites. Here I was able to check out the line on suicide bombings that I'd been given earlier.
Even if you have a right to self-defense, is it right to blow yourself up on a bus in Jerusalem with women and children on board because these people are still innocent?
شوف يا أخي الفاضل أن وصية سيدنا رسول الله لأي جيش مسلم لا تقتلوا طفلا ولا تقطعوا شجرا ولا تهدموا بيتا ولا تتعرضوا لرجال الأديان الأخرى ولا للشيوخ ولا للنساء ولا للأطفال. هذه تعاليم الإسلام وهذه هي آداب حرب الإسلام واللي يخرج عنها كان يحاسب. فعندما أحد يفجر
Two of Cairo's most senior Muslims and two verdicts giving much food for thought. So much for religious texts and doctrines being easy to decipher and clear-cut. I kept thinking of what the minister had quoted about Prophet Muhammad's sayings about respect for the lives of children and even trees. It was time to head back and test these views with those in the firing line. Al-Quds University, just outside Jerusalem. It's home to 7,000 students. 10% of them are Christian, the remainder are Muslim. I'd come to test feelings about the recent Haifa bombing and share with the students some of the views I'd heard expressed in Cairo.
How far can you go in resistance? What as human beings, particularly human beings who are religious, mainly Muslims, but also Christian, how far can you go with resistance?
When all the doors are closed in our faces, and the people who go and bomb themselves, they have all the ways are closed in their ways, because this maybe they go to bomb themselves. Okay, it's bad to kill ourselves, but all the ways are closed for them.
It's our choice. There's no choice to fight. There's no choice. Just fight.
We will fight until, the earth will be ended. And we say that this is our country until the earth is ended.
I didn't know very much about the Quran or Islam, but I was looking at the rules of war, and I did some homework on the sayings of Muhammad. And it attributes a particular passage to Abu Bakr, the first caliph who followed Muhammad. And it basically says that under no circumstances would he permit, or do not kill women, do not kill children, the old or the infirm, people who are sick.
I want to add something about this hadith.
That's the passage,
yeah. Prophet Muhammad, when he was, they were preparing for that war to go and open those countries, he also recommended that not only lives, he did not only recommended lives, he said never cut a tree. So
he had respect for life.
Yeah. Never cut a tree. Never attack any Christian person who is being who worships God. Okay.
They recognize the teachings, but the sympathy for violent self-sacrifice continued.
So why he bumped himself? So you must put some points why he bumped himself. Maybe he's suffering a lot. He see his father killed or his mother. But we must fight to have the freedom. In any cases, we must fight in a policy, in everything.
We've always been taught since we were in schools that we have to distinguish between Israeli people and Jewish people. They're totally different stories, and the only conflict right here is that Israel is trying sometimes to impose some kind of politics in the area by using religion. Okay, they're using religion in a very bad way, and I believe that Jewish people are people that ought to be respected by us, and we totally respect them. Our problem is with Israeli people, it's not with Jewish people.
Then, right at the end of our discussion, came a contribution from a shy young woman in the corner of the classroom who had hitherto been silent.
Killing myself is the only way to the fight.
Sorry?
Killing myself or yourself, the way of the fight in the Palestine.
Is that the only way?
Yes.
You really think that?
Yes. Because we didn't have arms, we didn't have tanks, nothing.
This encounter had cut a swathe through the neat simplicity of inclusive and excluding mindsets and their attitude to violence. A number of these educated youngsters had appeared respectful of Jewish religious rights, yet had spoken of their sympathy for the desperation of those who would take their lives, and with them, those of others. A sad day, compounded by an unexpected development only a couple of hours later. I found myself on a road just 10 minutes from Bethlehem, known as 2 Martyrs Street. Israeli tanks had bulldozed a house containing 2 Palestinians, who they suspected of organizing attacks into Israel. Both men had died inside. A violence among the children of Abraham that begets ever more violence. Images which solder their way into the minds of children. Picking around the rubble, I pondered the saying of an old Jewish rabbi, "The sword only comes into the world when justice fails." And quietly, I asked that something, anything positive might emerge from this haunting testimony to human failure. Next week, on the final leg of my journey, I visit post-9/11 America to take the pulse of religious tolerance down in the Bible Belt.
Muhammad is dead. He's a dead prophet, and Christ is a living Savior.
And discovering the green shoots of hope in the rubble of war, how Abraham's children in Bosnia are rising to the challenge of living in harmony.